Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, good afternoon everybody. So of course we are very happy to welcome you and at another event by Latvian Institute of International Affairs, but of course in partnership with our very good partners. Today the discussion is on energy in, or let's hope security without in the European Union and in the Baltic countries as well. If we look 2014, it is a year of significant developments. 10 years of, we can celebrate 10 years of Latvia, Baltic countries being a part of NATO and European Union, and I think this has been really the important impetus for development of our countries in the last 10 years. You can say that 2014 is also a year of expectations, not that next year we will be the presiding country of European Union, but also that new European Commission is starting to function. The European Parliament is as well a new one, and we have some expectations and hopes. So there are some institutional and not only changes and transformation within European Union, and with this we have some, both perhaps sometimes slight concerns, but I think more expectations. But this is also a year of some concerns or challenges if we speak geopolitically. Ukrainian crisis, or I believe we should name it more Russia's aggression and Ukrainian independence war rather than Ukrainian crisis, but whatever we defined it, it has influenced the whole thinking about the geopolitical configuration, about the security architecture, and not only in pure military or pure political or geopolitical terms. It's also about a trade, economic interaction, also energy interaction. So it's also about energy security in wider Euro-Atlantic space. And energy security is first of all about, or it is assumed or perceived first of all about a secure energy supplies, but it's not just about security of supplies. It's also about a liberalization of the markets, about well-functioning markets, about interconnections, about reliable supplies and prices. It's about a climate or environment-friendly energy. Most likely we can add the development of local, economically feasible and sustainable energy resources. So of course, when we speak energy security, we think wider issues. But still, 2014, energy supplies have been one of the top priorities, and especially interaction with our neighbors. And especially with one of them, Russia, which has been one of the very important partners also in terms of energy supplies. You might say that what has happened in 2014 has its silver lining. Because if you look last 10 years, not just about the EU enlargement and development, but also in terms of energy development, I think we made quite a considerable steps forward. If you look back 2004, well, we've been in quite a different situation as in 2014. So I think there are 10 years of developments also in energy field. You can add that particularly this year, 2014, has added some additional impetus for development of energy thinking, energy security, be it a new energy security strategy, be it stress tests, realizing or trying to understand what are the challenges for secure supplies, especially during the winter time. So there are some positive developments, and we might say the outside influences, outside concerns might create even some positive dynamic within the European Union. But is it the case? What are the concerns? What are the concerns remaining? What are the challenges remaining? How secure we are? How secure and stable and reliable on outside supplies we are during the winter time? So I think these are the issues which will be addressed today, and we have an excellent panel of distinguished speakers. Before I give the floor to my colleagues at the table, I can once more thank our partners, and as I always say that without partnerships no solidarity is possible also in energy field and also in discussing energy field. And we have of course our Lithuanian partners Geopolitical Studies Center from Vilnius, which made also the discussion possible and bringing people here. We have, of course, European Commission as a very important partner to us, European Commission's representation here in Latvia. And also, of course, we are appreciative to Riga Graduate School of Law for hosting us and making the debate also possible here in these, I think, very dynamic building, dynamic rooms. So with this, I finish my quite, I think, longish introductory remarks and immediately give the floor to Ruben Vermeeren, who is representing European Commission. I think we start with general overview. So what kind of state of affair we are at the moment within European Union, what are also the issues relevant for the development of energy issues, energy security here in the Baltic countries. Please, Ruben, floor is yours for some introductory remarks. I ask kindly my dear colleagues not to exceed 7 minutes, knowing the deep knowledge of all of experts. I'm afraid it not be easy for me as a moderator, even if I additionally add that for European Commission representative, I would be happy to give 10 minutes sort of to give this general overview at the beginning of our discussion. Please, Ruben, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I think I could limit it to 15 minutes. But no. I will try to do my best and within the 10 minutes. Go through it pretty quickly then, because I had indeed prepared a presentation that's a bit longer. I hope I won't speak too fast for you. If so, then give me a sign. I would like indeed to focus on what we've been doing over the last, let's say, 5 to 6 months in the context of the security of supply stress tests. I will focus on the European wide developments, the impacts that we've calculated of a disruption of Russian gas, the recommendations that we've given to the member states. And then I would like to zoom in on the Baltics a bit, if time allows that. And otherwise, if you have questions, I think in the discussion phase there will be a lot of time to go more into depth. So the package we have adopted and that you can find on our website on the 16th of October consists of a communication and a number of staff working documents, one of which relates specifically to the Baltic states and Finland. And one other one that I would like to point out is the last one on the list, and that's the report on the implementation of the regulation on gas security of supply, the regulation of 2010 that was implemented after the last supply crisis of gas. The goal, of course, was a very short-term one, to assess for this winter, this upcoming winter, what Europe can do to be better prepared should a full supply of Russian gas hit us, a full disruption. Will we be able to supply all the households, at least in Europe, with gas? And how can we ensure that any curtailments to customers are kept to the absolute minimum? This stress test exercise came about on the basis of the European Energy Security Strategy that in turn was requested by the European Council in response to the conflict in Ukraine in the beginning of the year. It had a short-term and a long-term side to it. The stress tests are clearly in the short term. And for the longer term, of course, the larger question of Europe's dependence on fossil fuels in general and gas in particular is also being addressed in that security strategy. And then you enter more into discussions about how to increase energy efficiency, how to finalize our internal energy market, which is not only good for prices but especially also for security of supply. Can we produce more? Can we increase renewables? How can we increase diversification of supplies? But that is not part of this stress test exercise that is today the subject of discussion. We involved not only all the member states but also the energy community. That's a set of countries such as Ukraine, Moldova, former Yugoslavian states that implement the third energy package on market liberalization. We've involved the ENSOs, the G7, especially the US, the International Energy Agency. And the idea was to have a look, to model the impacts of 4 scenarios. Disruption of Russian supplies that would last 1 month, disruption of Russian supplies that would last 6 months, 6 winter months, And the same exercise, but only for those Russian flows that enter the EU via the Ukrainian grid. In terms of results, well, first of all, it was clear, and we already had this idea, but it was underlined and confirmed that Europe is in a lot better position than it was 5 years ago after the last gas supply crisis. The internal market functions better. That means that gas flows more to where it's needed according to price signals. The infrastructure is also improved thanks to European funding, but especially thanks to market functioning. It makes economic sense to have bidirectional flows, and so these investments have been carried out on a number of important pipelines. Coordination work has increased a lot. There are many gas coordination group meetings led by the Commission. The Commission has increased its capabilities of dealing with crises in terms of information exchange. And we see also that some regional work is starting to be undertaken, albeit not much, but I guess in this respect the Baltics are an example region. The impacts, well, in the worst case scenario, some 5 to 9 BCM, that's roughly also the consumption here in the Baltic states plus Finland, some 8.5 BCM per year, would be missing. So 1 or 2% of the EU consumption if no measures at all are taken and if member states do not cooperate. And that cooperation, that is key in devising mitigating measures, but we come to that later. So how would these missing volumes be replaced? Well, to a certain extent you cannot replace them. For example, extra production in the Netherlands or UK or Romania is very, very limited. Also Norway is close to its maximum capacity. Pipeline imports from Algeria can almost not be increased either. So the key mitigating measures would be to fill the storages up more, but you still need gas for that, and that needs to come from somewhere. And otherwise LNG. LNG would be the key security of supply mitigating factor. But of course, the more demand there is for LNG, the higher the price. Cooperation is also a key factor when it comes to impact. We have assumed, as I said, for this scenario of the 5 to 9%, that 5 to 9 BCM, that there would be no cooperation. But we've asked ENTSOC to model also a scenario in which all member states would share the burden equally, divide the missing volumes, and then you see, and that is the upper picture actually, that is much less dark, that more member states have a smaller extent of missing volumes than a few member states that would be in extreme trouble. Market-based measures are, of course, the first one that should be taken, and only then you should move to non-market-based. And when you cooperate, you can longer use market-based measures than reverting to non-market-based in the short run. Market-based means using storage that you have in the country, making sure that your suppliers import LNG to the maximum, increase additional volumes that can arrive via pipeline gas, albeit that limited, and voluntary demand response is also a measure that, of course, in a functioning market environment, will prove itself to be functional, because parties will voluntarily reduce their demand because the price will go up. They will switch to other fuels or simply use less. It's a very effective means of making sure that less gas is needed. And when we enter then to the right of the red bar, then you see the non-market-based measures, strategic stocks that member states are holding, fuel switching. I'll come back to that later as well, and of course curtailments of various types of customers, but that's really the last resort measure. This is a simple count of the number of member states that are envisaging certain measures in emergency situations. And we see that some member states revert to non-market-based measures, or have to revert to non-market-based measures faster than others. The key measures that are envisaged are all surrounded by important, I would say, question marks. So member states can rely to a large extent on storage capacities being available in their underground gas storage facilities, but these storages have to be filled by someone. How can we be sure that they will be filled? We see that the summer-winter spread of gas, which is usually the indicator for filling the storages, is reducing in the last years, although this year it's again of a good level. And this, of course, has its impacts on the business case of storage operators, but also on the availability of gas in the winter. LNG, as I already said, we have loads of import capacities in the EU, more or less the same as the Russian volumes we are importing, but they are not being used at the moment. And the question is, to what extent can they be used should crises hit? What price are we prepared to pay for security of supply? There's the demand side, but there it was very clear from the member states' feedback in this process that the potential is very unclear. They don't. Member states have not assessed to what extent the demand side can actually contribute to mitigating the effects of a disruption. And fuel switching is the last key measure that most member states are assessing, but also the alternative fuels to which you will switching away from gas to, for example, oil or biomass or renewables. How long do these alternative stocks last? That is usually very shortly. I realize I'm running through it extremely fast, but I want to say one last word about the EU-wide, and then we go into the Baltics for just a couple of minutes. So the recommendations that we have given can be divided in a short-term and a long-term part. On the short term, first of all, no regret measure is to remove any barriers that still exist to market functioning. Again, when the market functions and is well connected and open to various suppliers, gas will be flowing to the areas where it's needed most, and it cannot be stopped at the borders. And today we see still that transmission capacities and storage capacities are not used in a market-based way, and Latvia is of course a key example there. Secondly, the security of supply regulation has not been implemented well by the member states. I can say a few words about that maybe later. And thirdly, coordination between member states can be stepped up. And in the midterm, we can think about increasing reversed flows, building or finalizing the key investment projects, and ensure more fuel switching capabilities for example, gas-fired power plants or district heating plants. So this is the Baltics. You'll know we made a focus group because there were two regions in our eyes that warranted a somewhat more detailed, focused, in-depth approach, given their situation and given their dependence on Russian gas. The ministries and the gas companies and even the electricity companies were already working together in this region. We decided to also include Finland, by the way. It's not connected. It is connected via the electricity grid. And therefore we thought it would be relevant for them because electricity has a role, in a sense, to mitigate also a gas disruption. So we asked over the summer the ministries to produce a report to do the scenario modeling, and they helped very well, and in the end produced a great report. I think I will skip for you because I believe you are experts. I do not have to explain what the gas grid looks like, how much gas is used, and that gas in some countries is more important than in other countries. I believe this is then common knowledge. Latvia and Lithuania are clearly the ones that are to a larger extent reliant on natural gas, whereas Finland and Estonia have lower shares and are also better prepared should the disruption happen. The 4 member states exchanged key data. What are the key infrastructures? To what extent can my neighboring countries rely on my infrastructure if I can help them? The modeling was carried out by the Lithuanian gas TSO Grid, and the Finnish electricity TSO carried out a comprehensive assessment of the impacts that a gas disruption would have on the electricity sector. Clearly, if you do a simple modeling exercise, then for a region that is 100% reliant on Russian gas, a full disruption scenario has dramatic effects immediately. All the gas is missing, basically. But when you look closer to the region, then you can see that the impacts of a disruption in the winter would rely to a very large extent on the availability of two key infrastructures. The Inčukalns storage here in Latvia and the Klaipėda LNG terminal in Lithuania, of which at the time of writing it was still unclear whether it was going to be ready and whether it would be able to supply actually gas not only to Lithuanian customers but also perhaps to Estonian customers during the coming winter. I will skip the electricity sector implementation, and these are then the recommendations that we have drawn up for the member states and the four concerned member states in this region. To very shortly summarize them, I think it's important for all the countries to ensure that fuel switching capabilities that they have put up are actually implemented in practice. That third-party access rules are implemented as quickly as possible here in Latvia, and that the key infrastructure projects that are ongoing, that is the Klaipėda-Kuršiņai pipeline in Lithuania, which brings LNG to the north, and the Baltic connector that would connect Finland and perhaps a regional LNG to the rest of the Baltic grid, that those are being put in place. I hope I was more or less in time.
More or less 15 minutes, yes. Thank you, Ruben. And I would immediately have one follow-up question more on general European Union energy strategy and sort of policy implementation. Unlike a number of experts, I would still believe that, again, as I mentioned, for me, in 10 years' time, European Union has achieved quite a considerable achievement. Sorry for tautology. There has been a step forward. But what you mentioned, and actually it's also included in a stress test report, that there might be scenario when countries don't cooperate in case of emergency. And you also mentioned that there is no, you can say, the very well developed coordination mechanisms developed. After 10 years, or you can say sort of success story, what many of us believe has been to some extent success story, but still in terms of cooperation in cases of emergency, it's still very much lagging behind, and we can rely on our own if there is emergency coming. Is it the case, or?
This is an area where member states are extremely cautious to rely to a large extent on their neighbors. This is something they want to keep for themselves, and that in principle they do not share with their neighbors. They take care of themselves in first instance. It's like an instinctive approach, attitude that they have. Now, that also is reflected indeed in the European rules that we do have on gas security of supply. They are indeed not prescribing to a very large degree mandatory cooperation. What you have to do is exchange plans to test whether your plan is actually realistic. But there's no such thing in place as a simple principle that says if my protected customers, so my households, are in trouble and you still have gas for your industry, then you have to give me that gas and I will pay you for it. And the other way around, I will send my gas to you. I will curtail my factories, my industries that don't really need it, only for the production purposes, and send it to you so that you can continue to supply your protected customers. That is not in place. That level of solidarity is not in place, that simple principle. But in order to do that, of course, it's not as simple as just saying in the spirit of solidarity we go that way because we're all together in the European Union. You need to be 100% sure that your neighbor will actually do it. You need to fully trust him. And you need to also trust that he doesn't free ride. And I think the free riding problem is the big problem. Countries saying, I have gas, I took care of myself, and now you want me to be supplying him who didn't do anything over the last years to improve his security of supply position. I'm not going to do that.
So it means there is full-fledged solidarity until the crisis hits.
Exactly. Exactly.
Next speaker is Krišjānis Kariņš, the member of European Parliament and of course also former Minister of Economy, and you've been very active in energy field. And sort of to continue our discussion already with the previous first speaker, I would not ask what has been done, but what should have been done more. What we Europeans could have done more in terms of being more ready and being more in a spirit of solidarity, in a mood and function of solidarity in the cases of emergency or crisis. Krišjānis, please, floor is yours.
Thank you very much.
7 minutes, please.
Oh, okay. I won't answer your question. I'm a politician, so I'll be like Kissinger. I'll just try to say what I want to say, despite no.
I know, but still.
To start off, I would say that actually the situation is not so bad, that from the last Russian-Ukrainian gas crisis, certain measures have been taken into place. And for example, there are EU countries which are now exporting gas back to Ukraine today. And that capability was not there some years ago. So it's not as bad as it seems. However, our dependence upon imported energy is as bad as it seems. So that's the bad news. The good news is we want to do well. The bad news is it's tough to do that. I want to show you a few pictures, some maps. It's not really sharp enough to see this. What this is, it's yesterday's Nord Pool electricity spot prices. Nord Pool is the most liberal, the most advanced intra-state market that Europe has. It's the Scandinavia, now also the Baltic countries, and the shades of color are helpful. The light shades are a lesser price, and the dark shades are a greater price. So yesterday, Latvia was paying 58 units, while southern Sweden for the same was paying 30 units. So 30 euros versus almost 60 euros. That's just yesterday's price, but if you look over the past, in June, over the past, since we joined the Nord Pool, we are consistently in the Baltics, especially in Latvia and Lithuania, far below the prices other customers are paying. And the question is why? Well, the question is infrastructure. This is a map prepared by our own Latvian Ministry of Economics. Up on the little map, maybe you can see those numbers. The 2013 average price that Latvia and Lithuania have been paying is almost 46 euros, and the average that Sweden has been paying, including north and south, is 40. So there's still it's that long-term average. So the prices that we say, it's a long-term trend. It's not just yesterday. Yesterday just shows what is of no surprise. But the reason is when you look at, this is the electricity market. When you look around the Baltics and of our electricity connections, we are connected to the Nord Pool market only through these two links going up to Estonia. So one was recently completed. The second link, the first one, is a few years before that. And then Estonia, therefore, is paying the same prices wholesale as Finland, because they are connected into the grid and they have those volumes that can move back and forth. Then you say, well, why we have connections with Estonia, why don't we pay the price? The answer is bottleneck. We have two, we're lacking a third connection, or we just need bigger wires, to put it simply. We don't have those. And it's the same, and Lithuania is closely connected to us, but separated out of Poland, separated out of Sweden. So what has Europe done? This was realized, of course, years ago. And legislation has been put in place and monies have been put in place to remedy this. So with European monies, the links to Estonia have been built. Currently, the link between Lithuania and Sweden is being constructed. It will be completed 2015. So that's underway. I don't know how far, actually, how one builds these things. But it's going to be a DC line, and that is being constructed. And also the high tension wires in Kurzeme, the western peninsula, the peninsular part of Latvia, is partially constructed up through Ventspils. And there's planned a third connection from Estonia. So once all of these infrastructures are up in place, and they will be, because there is funding provided for this, the Latvian customer will be paying a similar price to the customer in southern Sweden. My guess is that the southern Swedish customer will end up paying a little more and will end up paying a little less, because as a connected vessel, out of physics, it will even out more or less. It won't be perfect. Then there's the consideration that we're also still connected to the Russian grid, and the Baltic states are synchronized with the Russian grid, not synchronized, and these connections do not plan a synchronization. They're direct current, not alternating current. So we are still synchronized with the Russian grid, and if anyone is afraid that Russia in the short term will shut off the Baltic states' gas supplies, I would recommend you think twice, because that would mean shutting down the thermoelectric plants that are gas-fired, which means a lack of electricity supply in the Baltics, which means problems for Russia. We're hooked up to them. So a problem in our region actually physically would cause a problem in their region. It's not so simple. Always the details are quite complex. But this is what Europe is doing to answer this question: how can we get our customers to have more competitive prices and to get the market up and running? The answer is so basic as infrastructure. Without the infrastructure, you cannot have a market. Imagine a forest, the Middle Ages. A forest, on one side of the forest you have a little village and there's someone making pots. And on the other side of the forest you have a little village and another person making pots. But there's no path through the forest, or maybe there's lots of Robin Hoods and no one goes into the forest. The price of those pots, they're like monopolies. There's only one guy making them. There's no market. Whatever he says, if your vessel broke yesterday, tough, keep it in your hands. But as soon as you get that path through the forest, you can get a market going, and the price will be competitive. Maybe someone else will come in because they'll realize, oh, there's not one village, there's two. And I have 1 minute. Okay. Electricity will be solved. Gas, similar picture. The long and the short, this is from the European Commission. Every 6 months they publish wholesale gas data. If you study this, I can give you the link. The cost of Russian gas, piped Russian gas, is cheaper the further you go west. The closer you are to Russia, the higher the cost of Russian gas. Not of any gas, but specifically the same gas. So it's more expensive closer to source, further from source, less expensive. Can anyone tell me why this is the case? Yeah, it's infrastructure and competition. So when we look at the European, it's a little tough, maybe it's more clear from where you're sitting. The Baltics are completely circumvented via Nord Stream and Ukraine from the Western European grids. And as long as we will be isolated from the Western European grids, we will be paying whatever gas price Gazprom decides we will be paying. They say the price, the regulator then has a formula based upon the purchase price. That's the price we as customers pay. You don't like it, freeze. So, tough choice. And Europe has the legislation in place to create the necessary infrastructure in gas. There's the money in place to create the necessary infrastructure. But the big problem is among the Baltic states, we need agreements between our governments what infrastructure in what order to build. That is lacking. And in Latvia specifically, we're lacking the legislation, the legal framework, how inch accounts, which is the most important piece of infrastructure in the region because that's underground storage capacity. Roughly 2 years of Latvians' usage is underground right now. And we are currently exporting gas. We are now exporting. We're supplying Western Russia, Latvia, and Lithuania with gas. We're not importing gas, we're exporting. But that is, in 1997, given a 20-year monopoly to Gazprom. And we have no legal basis of what will happen in 2017. So we need that in order to get the infrastructure projects unlocked. But what Europe has done, we have made all of the decisions. It's not to say the table has been set. Now the 3 countries of the 4 have to sit down and start eating from that table, make the decisions. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Krišjānis. Yes, it's always a challenge to deal with politicians, especially in time limits, but you did, I think, very good job. I'm tempted to ask a question, because you said that some things could have been done better in Latvia, and I think absolutely so that we should think about our homework. This might be a little provocative, but you are part of the Unity Party.
Yes,
The party has been in government for years already.
yes.
Why these things have not been done?
I ask this question on a daily basis. My answer to this is that in our country, we have an incredibly strong gas lobby. The problem with the gas lobby is it's invisible. It's not in the way that the lobby I'm used to dealing with, a nice smiling young guy or young woman comes to your office, puts down the business card, has a bunch of brochures and says, this is the interest of the European Gas Association. We want this, we want that, we need this, and let's say we don't need this. I can agree, I can disagree, but I know who I'm dealing with. In Latvia, the gas lobby does not work that way. There's no political party that supports Russian gas interests. All parties say that we are for national interests. But in the end of the day, no one can make these political decisions, which are simple to decide, difficult to implement, but simple to decide. And the reason seems to be that when politicians try to understand what to do, they turn to the experts. And the experts on a whole are trained and funded through the old structures where all the money is coming from Gazprom, ultimately, including our own state monopoly, Latvian. It's a state, it's a national monopoly, but it has the thinking, big mother company, little, with a big central power plant, that is gas. Let's get the gas. Latvian wanted the gas thermoelectric stations that we are subsidizing. Incidentally, we're subsidizing Russian gas through our gas bills. They do not like or understand the idea of decentralization because that's competition to the gas. And the people who are the actual lobbyists often are completely unaware that they are lobbyists. That's the most frustrating part. They're not being paid. They've simply been educated in this way of thinking, and they are having a difficult time thinking outside of the box. And it's easy to think outside of the box when you work outside of the box, as I do. But it's very tough to think outside of the box when you're all the time in it. And it's a change of thinking that we need to free ourselves and to realize where the lobby is coming from. Because we have had people writing that we are blessed by Mother Russia's gas. Okay, it's very good, but we are cursed by the fact that it's a monopoly. And the political decisions have not been made because the politicians relying on the experts cannot get good independent advice. And that is my conviction.
Can I actually Can I actually just underline that? I had exactly the same experience, but in Ukraine, of people who were energy experts, who were actually anti-Russian, but giving me the Gazprom line. They weren't paid. They were there. But, liberalisation, it can't work. They were talking about maintaining the current system with Naftogaz as a monopoly, because they've been so brought up and educated in the system, whilst being fiercely anti-Russian. So that is, I understand.
Well, I think I should intervene here as a moderator as well, and as expert to some extent at least. I think not all experts sort of are gas lobby financed, and this is sort of disclaimer. And second sort of conclusion is that actually in this case Latvian energy strategy or Latvian energy policy is run by gas lobby and experts financed by gas lobby. Where are the politicians?
Our politicians, myself included, we are weak. And we are weak because we do not have long-standing traditions. It is simply a fact. Our organizations are weak because we do not have broad membership. My party, which is one of the broadest parties in Latvia, I think we only count 2,500 people. We should be 20,000 people. With 20,000 people, you can start to bring forward people who are not only on the inside circle, but maybe also quite competent. So it's a systemic difficulty. The good news is we're going to grow through this difficulty. We'll grow out of it. But it's simply where we are. In 1997, the government said, Gazprom, here is a monopoly for 20 years. Go to town. We are 17 years into that. We're 3 years still before the monopoly ends. At least we've realized, hey, we have to do something. The problem is actually deciding what and how to do. Last year, when the parliament took the vote to actually say the monopoly will end in 2017, this was hotly contested, even within my own party, I have to admit. Okay. So it's a very tough thing, and we lack as politicians often a reflex of defending ourselves. It's odd, but I see it in my other colleagues from other countries. There's no German who would ever imagine that Germany could rely on one source. When they built Nord Stream, the goal was to circumvent any potential problems with Ukraine, but they offset imports from Russia with imports from Norway. They will never buy more from Russia than they can buy from Norway.
Okay, Krišjānis, thanks. I think that's very revealing and very frank, and I think we also appreciate his, saying this. But let's go and sort of, since we also outline and touch the Baltic dimension, I'm happy to give floor to Juozas Augutis, who is the head of Energy Security Research Center and also the vice rector at Vytautas Magnus University. I guess I must ask, but I will not ask, but just loudly thinking, is Latvia the weakest link among the Baltic countries, taking into account what was also said by Krišjānis? But I will ask perhaps in a different way. Three Baltic countries differ, and I have heard even this comparison in energy fields, that Estonians are free marketers, Latvians are consumer protectors, and Lithuanians are independence fighters, also in energy field. Would you say what Lithuanians have done? This has been really a success story, and it can be, in a sense, replicated also in Latvia and Estonia, especially in Latvia. Should we learn from Lithuanians? Would you see that exactly this is an example to follow for us? Please.
Okay. Can I?
Yeah. If you promise me 7 minutes, yes.
Okay, good afternoon. Maybe this answer to your question I will leave to the end my presentation. I would like to start discuss a little bit with you about energy security. What is it indeed? How it can we measure energy security? Many people talk about energy security from different sides. It's part of import or self-generation energy. In Lithuania, we created a method, I don't know, bad or good, but anyway, it's a method for analyzing energy security like one integrated characteristic. It's based on simulation, on indicator system, on very high mathematics and so on. But anyway, it's work, and we started from the description of energy security. If you look to the official documents, you will find that energy security is the ability or possibility of energy system to supply energy for consumers, and what is very important, under normal condition with reasonable prices. It means that prices cannot be higher than in the market or in the neighbor market. But it's not enough for calculation, for expression in qualitative or quantitative manner. We added to this energy security description second part. We think that energy security is the ability of system to resist against different potential threats, including, of course, technological or technogenic, natural, economic crisis, and so on. But what very, very important, social, political threat, geopolitical threat. Of course, it's very difficult to measure, very difficult to put geopolitical threats or risk to the model, but it is possible, and we have, of course, a scheme for energy security analysis. We start from analysis of threats, what we have barriers, starting from diversification or physical protection, and in the end we have a diplomacy. In some cases it can help. Anyway, but the barriers not enough, and in some cases we have disturbances that arise from different threats, and in this case we can simulate like our colleagues in GRC and Joint Research Center simulate a system, what will happen in one scenario or another, and how it's look results. It is possible to calculate in one figure, in one number, for example, in scale from 0 to 100%, express energy security level. Energy security level here, and I don't know. You can see in a figure. We have results for 3 Baltic countries for Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. It's until 2012. It's without a LNG terminal, and you can see that Lithuania is in the worst situation, is about 51% only energy security level. In Estonia is the highest, 66. From our feeling, acceptable level can be about 70%. Maybe only Estonia is close to acceptable level. Why is different countries is very close in the close condition, but anyway, I don't like to repeat information about gas situation, but you see that Lithuania depend until now in 100% from Russian gas, and part of gas imbalance, energy balance in Lithuania is the highest. Is one of reason why Lithuania was in the bad situation. More sophisticated methods allowed us to look what influence of one or another project to energy security level. And here you can see a jump from 2014 until 2016. The highest jump is provocated by LNG terminal. Of course, it's solve our problems with gas, it solve our problems with electricity generation. Now we imported electricity, I don't know, 85, 86%, for example, Lithuania, but we have a possibility in Lithuania, we have a strong generator in Elektrėnai, 2 gigawatts, we can produce electricity, but these generators use gas like fuel, and of course, if we haven't, we have disruption of gas, we have a shortage in electricity production. Here you can see different scenarios, and without nuclear power plant, by the way, it's not bad scenario. In the mix of electricity by our calculations, the best situation for energy security is balanced mix, at least from 3 parts. It's renewables, it's part of electricity or heat production based on gas, and maybe second part can be electricity based on nuclear power plant, but it's not crucial, not critical infrastructure. It is possible to change. Here was mentioned about European energy security strategy. There are one additional action for Baltic countries. It's so-called is BEMIP. Plan for integration energy in Baltic countries. In June of 2009 was signed a memorandum of understanding of the Baltic energy market in interconnection, and this plan work not in 100%, but anyway, main areas of cooperation indicated in this plan. If we add to this plan what is mentioned in the European Union Energy Security Strategy in 2014, here was described, key projects. Here I show you project which connect with Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. We have 11 or 12 different projects. It's enough by our feeling. It's enough for reaching acceptable level of energy security for Baltic countries. But it's necessary to work with this project to make some remarks from European Union energy strategy. It's the same like my colleagues mentioned it, and maybe it's all.
Okay, thank you. But then I still would come back once more what I asked you, perhaps in more precise and concrete way. Just we celebrated, Prime Ministers of 3 Baltic countries celebrated the independence.
Yes.
The LNG terminal in Klaipėda. My question is, isn't it too expensive? And should Latvia do something similar?
Yes, it is expensive. You know, if you look to the end price, it's about 1.5 billion liters. I don't know if it's necessary to euro, three times less. But anyway, it's a very high price, about 5-6% in the price for consumers. But it's not very high price. It's not 50%. If you look to the situation of Lithuania 3 years ago or 2 years ago, we paid for Russian gas, for Gazprom gas, price about higher than $500. 1 year ago, approximately, this price was reduced, and the difference between this higher price and lower price covered price of our LNG terminal. I don't know. Can we say that reason for reducing of the Gazprom price was a successful project with LNG or not? I believe that it is.
Mm-hmm. And do you believe Latvia should build something similar? Is enough still space for LNG terminals in the region?
No, I think not necessary to build additional terminal. Maybe in Finland or Lithuanian terminal capacity is more than enough for 2 countries. I think it's necessary for politicians to sit down and find a good, reasonable way for I don't know how to use this terminal, and in Šņuka storage, it's both projects can work very successful and very competitive in the market.
Okay, thank you. Let's proceed. Alan Riley, good friend of ours, frequent guest as well here, professor at the City University in London. So, what's your perspective on EU energy, but especially still since we are starting to discuss the Baltic dimension and time is limited, I would really be appreciative to have sort of your perspective on the Baltic energy development, how it looks from the from Isles.
From the Isles. I'm going to talk a little about the Baltic situation. I'm probably going to make a little observation about the Gazprom antitrust case, because this is to some degree of Lithuanian origin. We had an experts meeting beforehand, and I was saying that I've been here before, and I've talked about Baltic energy security and gas pipelines and floating gas facilities for many, many years. In fact, it's a kind of Groundhog Day. I come here, I repeat the whole thing, I get totally ignored, and everything goes on as before. And I was saying that I actually was, before I came here, I was thinking, when was the first time I raised all this? And I think it was about 2004. And I was then a very naive Western European energy expert. And I said, it's clear what you need to do. Riga has got these fantastic facilities, the underground storage facilities, huge capacity, The really important thing is to get a floating gas regasification terminal and put it into Riga harbour. You see, the problem with these terminals normally is that they're very difficult to operate because you can't use the full capacity. So a kind of big one, 5 BCM capacity. You probably can only use about 3 BCM because you've got the ships coming in. They've got to be very neatly scheduled. So unless you've got lots of storage capacity, which is expensive, it's very difficult to do. Aren't the Baltic states lucky? You've got this fantastic storage facility. You can easily bring in an LNG gas floating terminal. And the other thing I was suggesting, get the 3 countries together and create a common network, and then perhaps get initially state ownership for the network in common between the 3 states, and then liberalise the network. You'll have the new LNG gas coming in, you'll have the Russian gas, you'll create competition, and then the most brilliant piece of this was that then you actually flog the network, and the unified network, privatised, will have a huge capital gain, which the 3 states can benefit from. Now, I said, this is what we should do. I've got a little note from 2004 in which I said all of this. And then I kind of realised, Baltic cooperation, it doesn't happen, does it? And I realised that this is actually much more difficult. Now, clearly there's been success in relation to the electrical power systems, but for the whole reasons, the gas lobby and a whole series of other issues, in addition to people not getting on as well as perhaps they should, for a whole host of institutional, political, cultural, and linguistic reasons, we have not been actually able to do that. And so one of the issues is I'm not going to make a call for Baltic cooperation as I did 10 years ago. But what I would say is that there are opportunities which flow from the LNG terminal in Lithuania now. I mean, that's got 4 BCM capacity. Total consumption is around 6 BCM in the region. The ability to perhaps maximize capacity, to put in additional interconnectors and increase capacity of interconnectors to create proper reverse flow is worthwhile. Now, there are some bottlenecks along the way. There's some legal bottlenecks, some institutional bottlenecks. But if you could do that, you would significantly increase the supply security of the region and also lower prices for everybody. So I think that is something which I think we could look at doing. And if you think about it, at the moment, the Ukrainians are doing better than the Baltic states in cooperation with the other parts of the Union. You've got reverse flow facilities coming in, providing gas in. They're actually using the liberalised market system to deliver lower prices to Ukraine than Russia is offering. So if the Ukrainians cooperate with various parts of the EU, surely the Baltic states, who are all in the EU, should be able to generate a greater degree of cooperation. And just turning to the Gazprom case, I mention this for 2 reasons. One is it is to some degree of Baltic origin. That is, it was Lithuania who filed a complaint against Gazprom. And this is a case in which what is alleged is that Gazprom has been splitting up the European market with its destination clauses. So essentially saying, you Poland, you can have gas, but you must not sell it on to Germany, which of course is a splitting up of the European market, denying third-party access. So where they control the pipeline, either directly or indirectly, they stop any other customer getting onto the pipeline network or suppressing new pipelines or LNG terminals, and the linking of the price to the gas price to the oil price, and the way they actually structure the price systems for gas across Europe. As you were saying earlier, the fact that it is the closer you are to Moscow, the higher the price you pay, which seems to be contrary to any ordinary economic logic. And of course, in European competition law, you have this rule, the abuse of dominance rule, which says a dominant company, especially a super dominant company, has a special responsibility to respect the market and operate in a pro-competitive manner. And all I shall say to you is, and do we think that has Gazprom behaved like that across Europe in the last decade or two? I'll leave that question hanging out there. Now, the question is what is happening with this and what effect will it have in the Baltic states? The case to some degree went into suspension at the beginning of the Crimean annexation. But of course the case has gone on. The former competition commissioner Almunier admitted himself. I'm not sure he was supposed to actually say this. He kind of slipped of the tongue, but he did say that there is a statement of objections. I am told it is already over 600 pages long, and so it will be the longest prohibition decision in history if it comes out like that. I think we're probably going to see a review of the process this autumn, and I expect the Commission, Gazprom is going to be given one last opportunity to try and do a deal. I actually don't see much chance of that happening, so I suspect we'll probably get a statement of objections in the spring. This is a Commission prosecution document sent privately to Gazprom, and then subsequent to that, if no resolution is raised, and I think it's very difficult to see now that there would be such a resolution, we would have a prohibition decision sometime in 2016. Now, what does all this mean? I think the point about it is this, is that if you have a prohibition decision, the media bangs on about damages, and I think damages are irrelevant to this. The real issue is the terms of a prohibition decision. Possibly the option of the third-party access and the forced sale of Gazprom-owned assets, energy assets, pipelines, and other facilities across Europe. I think so. That's one issue. The second issue is the linking of the oil price to the gas price, and the question of whether or not the way Gazprom constructs the price will be deemed unlawful. These are the really potentially powerful antitrust aspects. Now, of course, if that happens, then you'll begin to see changes in the way the European gas price is structured already. And I say this to my friends at Gazprom. I say, you're already in a state of retreat. You say you need this link with the oil price, yet already more than 50% of the European gas market is no longer linked to oil. It's hub-traded gas. And I said, in any event, the oil price is falling, so what advantage does it give you? You're fighting a pointless rearguard action. And so I think you are beginning to see a mixture of these legal changes reinforced by market changes are beginning to deliver this change. I think if we can more interconnect up the Baltic market, we can extend the benefit of the LNG terminal in Lithuania to the rest of the region, and you have these changes. That will provide enough material for fundamental and decisive change, even in the Baltic states. I'll stop there. Thanks.
Even in the Baltic states and even in Latvia?
Even in Latvia.
Why I'm asking is this, and again sort of contextualizing what you said both about the Baltic countries and about Gazprom, what I hear around the table. In case of emergency, not really cooperation will take place. The gas lobby is important and dominant in Latvia. The gas supplies 100% from Gazprom. The no-liberalized market. What Latvia has, what kind of tools in dealing with Gazprom? What kind of instruments we have?
Well, once you have, if you have the LNG terminal in Lithuania, and you create sufficient capacity of access to the LNG terminal, and you bring in more gas, so not just for Lithuania but for Latvia as well, that begins to open up the opportunity for change in the Latvian market as well, surely. And there are other things that can be done too. I mean, Lithuania has shale gas as well. I mean, whether the Lithuanians will get around to developing their shale gas, we'll see. But the point about it is that you've got now that facility exists. You've got the capacity to be able to do something with it in a way which was not the case before. Now, it may well be that Latvia and the gas lobby sit there in comfort and decide the best solution is to remain close and tied and happy with Gazprom. That is an option. But if you do not want to remain there, it seems to me that you've now got an option. Because you've got the additional, because the Lithuania does not need all the capacity. There is quite a lot of liquidity coming on stream for LNG. There is the possibility of being able to do something. I'm clear, we're not talking an issue tremendously here of price, but we're talking about economic independence and indeed the ability to stop price gouging or over-the-top prices. You were talking earlier about $500 per 1,000 cubic meters, that sort of top end of the pricing structure. That you can stop that at least.
Okay, so I guess I might conclude paradoxically that Latvia's advantage and bargaining chip with regard to Gazprom, it is Lithuania.
Yes.
I agree.
So there is still Baltic solidarity in this case. It's not that...
Inadvertent Baltic solidarity, shall we say.
It's not that bad. Okay, so but let's proceed to Mikhail Krutikhin, who is one of the outmost experts in Russian energy matters, and also the co-founder of Rus Energy Consulting Agency and editor-in-chief of the Russian Energy Weekly newsletter. So Mikhail, of course, is very highly respected, the expert in, I think, all around the world. But Mikhail, I would ask sort of the following already our discussion, and I know that you've been quite critical on, if I assess it precisely, you've been quite critical on Gazprom on Russia's sort of advantages with regard to Europe. But isn't it that what we hear around the table, that Europe is quite vulnerable, that it's sort of house of cards, and if Russia wants to push it, even though it's also its weaknesses and its liabilities, still it can push it, it can pressurize it. Because Europe is not united in many regards, and it can use also the instrument tool of disruptions this winter, sort of to show that basically without Russia it would be difficult, because it might expect that Europeans will not be coordinating their activities in case of emergency. So how is it from Russian perspective?
You are describing one of the desires of Mr. Putin. Well, basically, since I have only 7 minutes, I'll have to describe what's going on in the Russian gas strategy very broadly, without going into detail. Well, basically, Mr. Putin has been expressing openly his desire since 2006, when he said that the ideal case would be for Russia to establish some new routes of export of Russian gas. And in 2009, he even organized a conference in the city of Salihard in Russia. He invited foreign investors and told them that if you are not happy in Europe with the conditions of our gas sales, we will close down the taps and we will export all our gas in liquefied form to the United States. Well, everybody thought it was either crazy or because it was not consistent with any arithmetics, so very simple arithmetics, because of the price difference of prices, because of the volumes of gas and so on. But still the idea persisted. Now that Mr. Putin saw that Russian LNG cannot replace absolutely what Russia sells in Europe, there is a new idea, China. So Mr. Putin declared in September, first in May and then in September, that we are going soon to connect our pipelines in the east with the pipelines in the west, and we are going to reroute our flows of gas where the market is more well beneficent for us to China or to Europe. Well, unfortunately, he forgot his arithmetics again. Well, first of all, China does not need Russian gas at all, as experts of BP have proven in their estimates. Second, if China buys any of Russian gas, it will be below production and transportation costs, which would mean that Russia is going to subsidize Chinese gas consumers. Then the costs of the Russian infrastructure are going to be prohibitive, and even if gas is sold at the volumes that Mr. Putin wants to China, it will never be reimbursed, the costs of the capital construction. Then we see that China cannot replace the European market for Russian gas. And we see that China is reluctant to finance that infrastructure in Russia, which means that sooner or later there will be some revelation, some discovery for Mr. Putin that it's impossible to either make equal exports to Asia and to Europe, or it is impossible to hope that China is replacing Europe at all. So, unfortunately, the moment for such revelation is not very good. The Russian economy is ailing. We see that the oil prices are falling, and 52% of the Russian federal budget depends on oil and gas revenues. And we see that there are sanctions. We see oil prices are not high, and it means that basically when Mr. Putin realizes that gas markets are not increasing for Russia, he would understand, well, maybe that Europe is the last place that they should cooperate with. in order not to lose this last big market. Domestic market is not growing. China is not going to accept all those volumes of gas that Russia proposed to sell to them. And, well, basically, and unfortunately, this is the moment when sometimes economic logic does not work in Russia. And the decision that the Russian government is going to make about this situation, maybe it is not economical, maybe it is not, well, logical at all, not reasonable at all. We see that there are three very large-scale opportunities for Russia. One is, well, unfortunately, to become desperate and to organize some sort of a mobilization economy in Russia, to suppress all opposition and to follow the line of Cold War, and maybe not even Cold War, but something of a hot war, such as a warfare in Ukraine and so on. So it's not a very good scenario at all. Then there is another scenario, accepting all the terms of China and, well, building that infrastructure and coming to, well, some sort of a cooperation with the Chinese. And this year, during the economic summit in St. Petersburg, Deputy Prime Minister of China said, okay, let's establish some sort of a common economic zone in Eastern Siberia and Far East. We have plenty of people, and you have very few people there, just 6 million in the Far East. And we have plenty of finance and opportunities. You have natural resources. So another scenario is to, well, to make Russia a good source of natural resources and wealth for China, and a good territory to host all those additional workers and, well, Chinese and North Koreans. One of the deputies of the Russian parliament even suggested that let's populate Russian villages in the east with the Chinese and the Koreans. Okay, quite a nice idea. And there is another scenario which would mean changing the attitude. Well, unfortunately, when this scenario was discussed at a think tank in Moscow a couple of months ago, all the audience believed that this scenario is, well, the probability of the scenario is approaching zero. It's not the kind of mentality for the Russian leader to change the attitude, because changing the attitude would mean to some sort of, well, liberalization of the economy, democratic freedoms, and embracing the Western values, economically, politically, ideologically, and so on. So becoming a part of the Western civilization, so to say. Well, unfortunately, this is, well, not the way the Russian leaders are thinking about. So basically, I come down to a very simple prediction for this winter, not for the years to come. I think we must expect some disruptions of Russian gas supply, and maybe in some cases it will be a critical situation for some countries, such as Baltic nations, maybe not such as Balkan nations, but not in the Baltic. I think the flow of gas to the Baltic nations will continue in the winter. Sorry, I have expired my...
No, everything is perfect. Thank you, Mikhail. Just one more sort of clarification. Would you say that those disruptions would happen because of what? Because of intentional policy by Kremlin somehow to pressurize, or by, you can say, escalation of events on the ground in Ukraine?
I cannot exclude the possibility of intentions. But basically, even without those intentions, if we look at the scheme of delivery of gas across Ukraine to European consumers, usually it was like that. In the periods of peak demand in wintertime in Europe, Gazprom was delivering as much gas as possible along the usual route, and Gazprom was also borrowing some gas from underground storage facilities in Ukraine. Now they have accumulated first. The amounts are smaller than usual. And Ukraine, since it did not receive any gas from Russia since March, they will be using the same gas from their own underground storage. Gazprom does not have this cushion of security of supply. So it is not enough for Gazprom just to send whatever gas it can produce. They need some underground storage facilities. They do not have it. There will be disruptions. And I believe that but even intentions could be also at work, because Gazprom wants to show, and when I say Gazprom, it is basically Putin, because Putin and Gazprom is the same. Excuse me. Mr. Miller is just a postman who delivers orders of Putin to Gazprom. And intention could be like that. Take a look, Europeans. You have Ukraine, which cannot deliver all the Russian gas. It will not be logical, because the Ukrainians have installed the measurement facilities everywhere, on their underground storage facilities, at the entrance of the grid, at the exit of the grid. And so it is easy to prove that the Ukrainians have no fault in disruptions. But the propaganda war that Ukrainians are to blame will begin in Russia. It is already beginning. And so I believe Russia is going to say, well, accept our plans for the South Stream, and accept the role of Gazprom as a monopoly supplier in some cases, because Ukraine is, is not a good place to transport gas.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. So, I am also happy to give the floor to Ms. Rota Šņuka, who is head of the Energy Market Infrastructure Department in the Ministry of Economy. And again, a little bit I'm tempted to have some more provocative question, and coming back what Krišjānis said about the gas lobby and experts, and how about liberalization in Latvia. We are lagging behind, and it is influenced by some interest invested groups, or basically there are just some structural, very natural reasons of lagging behind, and perhaps we are not lagging behind at all, that we are just perfectly developing and perfectly being liberalized in due course. Please, Šņuka, the floor is yours for a comment.
Thank you for the possibility to also express opinion of probably more myself when I will not speak on behalf of government. First of all, this was very timely conference, and in this geopolitical situation, we hear quite a lots of new ideas. And I'm not a politician, I never was, and I even will not call myself as an expert, but I can still summarize some points from a woman's perspective. And first of all, if I may start quite broadly, and here we started to speak about solidarity, and this I think is quite a key issue which we might miss at one stage. And during the stress tests, we participated also and organized quite a lot of meetings at the ministry with assistance of commission, and we learned quite a lot what might be bottlenecks. And the main one, which I again would like to express again this word solidarity, what we were analyzing, first of all, how we would identify this crisis situation. That this crisis situation started today in all 3 or 4 countries, and we should give up everything and help another country. And of course, this is not only for gas, which involves electricity, because we can switch from gas to electricity. We can replace heating system with fuel, and there is a lot of options what we can do if we would like to do. But I should also say that cooperation during the last year between all 3 countries has been quite success. And probably this was also how we went ahead with infrastructure projects, and this is probably another issue is infrastructure in the internal market. And from that point, I would say that it go hand in hand, and we need those internal market rules, and we need infrastructure. And this is somewhat, I think, we quite a lot cooperate between also our TSOs or transmission system operators in gas and in electricity, to really getting plans how we, first of all, making this gas structure work, and secondly, how we make this electricity system to work in synchronous mode with continental Europe. And coming back maybe more to gas sector, maybe one of the problems is that we really having not very stable this political situation, as I'm always counting how many ministers we have On the wall, we have in Ministry of Economics there's a hall where we hanging all photos, and I think at least one per year, on average. And probably this is one of problems that we really need clear political guidance in which way we are going. And secondly, there should be good cooperation between experts which we are having or which service we still can buy and politicians, and really to look in one way. Because, of course, I don't know how to call it more like lobby or of course, all companies and all sectors would like to express their opinions, and some of them, some is right, and we have to listen to what sector says. But, of course, there is some extent where we should find out this most economical way. And I think we are in a situation when by 17 we have to liberalize the market. We have 2 years to go. And which model we will take, we already have been working on that for several years. I am with the ministry and with the sector. And I hope that next year will be we will really start and then finalize this part, which is something which has to be done. This is really our homework between all 3 Baltic countries, in which we should probably work more hardly. And finally, I think another issue is which maybe was not touched upon so much here is about governance. And here is a good example of this BEMIP region, and which showed quite clearly when we were working on the stress tests that there are some issues we can clearly solve on the EU level, but we now also need those regional cooperations and like BEMIP region, like electricity, where Mr. Kariņš showed this Nord Pool spot and how prices work. And we are connected somehow in different ways. And as we will be taking over presidency starting from 1st of January, this will be probably quite a challenge for Latvia, and one of issues clearly will be energy union. And so far as we can understand, it's still trying to find out its shape, what will be value added on this formation. But clearly the issues like solidarity, infrastructure, internal market, as well as governance will be as key issues. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may immediately sort of again to clarify one question, and representing the market and infrastructure department at the same time, also they're having disclaimer that you are speaking in personal capacity. What is your personal opinion? What would be the best unbundling model for Latvia?
We should probably aim at the full unbundling ownership unbundling. First of all, as we have one enterprise, Latvia's Gāze, which is now, we probably have to split in the best way, which still probably should be negotiated. And as soon as we will process that step, we can go for another and unbundle transmission system and as well as inch counts. It should be discussed whether together or another way, but it is gradual process.
Okay, thank you. So let's open the floor for, I think it's been a long and quite diverse and interesting discussion, so but let's open the floor. We still have some time for the Q&A session. Please raise your hand, introduce yourself, and if you have some particular person to address, also the name and sort of ask your question. So please. Yeah, also.
It's perhaps a little bit outside the region, but nevertheless, since we have these experts here, I can't resist asking, Mr. Riley, Mr. Krutikhin, what is your interpretation of, or how do you analyze the Russian decision to sign an agreement about supplying gas for Ukraine that was taken just recently? What does that indicate about Russian intentions and policies towards Ukraine in a wider context? And perhaps what does it indicate about the policies towards Europe and so forth?
Okay. Perhaps let's take immediately some other questions there are, please. Yes? Yeah.
I'll take the next one. Several of you actually indicated...
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Ruben. Several of you indicated not only the possibility, but actually a probability of disruptions. Even though Mr. Krutikhin thought it could be in the Balkans, not in the Balts. My question is, are we ready for it? I very much value Mr. Kariņš's extremely frank observation of the abysmal lack of cooperation on just about anything between the Baltic states of significance. And I wonder if any of you know, are there plans in place? Does anybody know what to do in case of disruptions, indeed? And, you know, how do you actually judge the probability thereof?
Thank you. So, some other question? Yes, please. Yes, please.
Ivar Slokenberg's law firm of Lowen. Krišjānis, Mr. Kariņš, is your somewhat pessimistic outlook somewhat tempered by the optimism of Mr. Riley for 2016 and the ministry's just stated goal of full ownership and unbundling?
Okay. So I guess let's sort of would be the first round of questions, and please let's start with Ukraine and Russia deal, or Ukraine-Russia EU deal, and then proceed more to the Baltic dimension and cooperation.
Basically, this is some sort of a temporary agreement for the winter season, and it is not enough to guarantee uninterrupted gas supply to Europe. Basically, the difference of the opinions is like that. The Ukrainians want a fair treatment. They want a new gas contract, which would be made along the same lines as Gazprom signs contracts with European companies such as Eni, for example, where the formula of price is based on the price at distribution hubs, on the free market, so to say. And they understand that such a contract would be much cheaper than the current one. Gazprom is reluctant to accept such terms and says, no, we regard this temporary agreement as a modification, temporary modification of the existing contract. And when this modification comes to an end in March, I think there will be a new round of conflicts and crisis. And still, the problem is even psychological, because what the Ukrainians are suggesting is a win-win situation. Russia would be receiving revenues for gas sales in Ukraine. Gazprom would not lose its reputation in Europe as a reliable supplier. Ukraine is not going to freeze in winter. The Europeans are not going to freeze in winter. Everybody would be happy. What Gazprom is suggesting is that everybody would be unhappy. The Europeans and Ukraine would freeze. Gazprom is going to lose whatever reputation it still has, and the Russian budget will be without any revenues from gas sales to Ukraine. But basically, this is the psychology of the Russian negotiators. They cannot accept a wise and reasonable solution if it comes from the fascist junta of Kiev or something like that.
Yes, I would tend to echo that. I think this is a temporary stopgap deal for this winter. I'm not even sure whether, because I think part of the trouble is, and I think Mikhail reflects this, is the mercurial nature, I think I'm putting it kindly, of the Kremlin administration is such that they may decide to tear this up in a few weeks. Who knows? There are lots of other ways of doing it. One of the issues is there is a war in eastern Ukraine. Eastern Ukraine is being invaded. Vice President Biden wouldn't use that word, but I shall use the word. Eastern Ukraine is being invaded by a foreign power. A number of the pipeline networks run through or begin to run through those parts of eastern Ukraine. It wouldn't take very much at all for a couple of key explosions in the key places to stop gas flowing. So there is that is possible. And of course, it may actually not be initially accidental, in the sense it may not be initially intended. Something may happen, and on that particular day, the Kremlin may decide to just go with it. So I think that's a sense of what you're dealing with. On the disruptions issue, clearly, I think Europe is much more prepared for disruptions than it was in 2009. I mean, one of the things which has not been mentioned here, and again, this is one of the, us being British and saying how fantastic European Union policies is slightly unusual, but one of the things which is really interesting is the European Energy Recovery Programme, in which the EU spent about 1.3 billion euro, putting in 100 million euros worth of interconnector here, 50 million of reverse flow capacity here, has created a degree of resilience across the Union, which does make a significant degree of difference in comparison to 2009. And what the other thing you see is the extent to which we have got the tanks and the storage facilities are filled up in a way which they weren't before. And also, you have got conversations going on in the background about where are the LNG resources. Do I think if there was a major disruption, do I think the Europeans would be on the phone to the White House, the White House would be on the phone to Tokyo, and some more of the nuclear power stations might be coming online? I think that might be something which might happen to actually increase the amount of liquidity. Do I think the Germans and extremists would also put on their nuclear power stations? Probably yes. Do I think that quietly behind the scenes various European states are looking at the coal-fired power stations which were taken offline under the Large Combustion Plant Directive, and maybe quietly refurbishing them so that if they are required to come online, they could do so. All these different, there are a number of different options there which are there. Just on ownership and bundling as a Latvian option of choice, my own view is ownership and bundling is always the way to go, actually particularly in smaller states. The trouble is you go for anything else, you end up with a huge complexity of regulation, whereas the great advantage of ownership and bundling is clean. You need far less regulation, far less resources to police the whole thing. And especially if you've got a gas lobby you worry about, ownership and bundling is a much better option. And the other thought I've got in terms to insulate yourself against the gas lobby, and again it's Baltic cooperation, but I shall raise it, is what about a Baltic energy regulator in order to actually run the system and be less subject to any form of lobbying, intentional or inadvertent? I'll stop there.
Okay, thanks. So it's a good bridge to the Baltic dimension and Latvian dimension. Krišjānis, please, the floor is yours.
A very direct question. I don't consider myself, and I have maybe misguided you if I come across as completely pessimistic. But experience has taught me that it's a hell of an uphill slog. I have spent a lot of time in the past years sitting with the Minister of Economics of our country and trying to convince this institution to come out with a view on the LNG terminal and to argue that view with the Commission. I've spoken with the Commissioner about that and about what could actually unbreak that logjam. And I have, how shall I say it correctly? I have encountered extreme prudence in espousing any view from our government, which makes me completely frustrated because the technical how to unbundle is extremely complex, no mistake about that. But it turns out more difficult is actually finding the courage to say, we will unbundle. No politician in a responsible position has said that, because every politician who is sat in this position understands that as soon as you say that very clearly, you will be bomb blasted. I have been a minister. I understand how interested parties can do great smear campaigns against individuals if and when they decide. Our press is not so difficult to persuade in this way, unfortunately. And there is a great hesitation, but I am not giving up my fight. I now have 2 new commissioners to work with from the European side. I have gotten to know both of them, and it will be very interesting. I think there will be good support coming from the Commission. And I am, unfortunately today, weren't able to put the times together. I'm very much looking forward to meeting our new Minister of Economic Affairs, and I hope that in this person I will see that light of courageousness that will simply state the obvious, because I think to any observer, I agree, it seems quite obvious what we need to do And why can't we just get up the nerve to do it? Because the ministry is not incompetent. We have competent people. But I think, as correctly said, it's the political guidance that we need. And I have encountered among our own politicians a lack of wanting to tackle the tough issues. And I hope that we will do this now, simply because it's a new parliament, it's a new start. So hope dies last, but I won't give up. I will continue lobbying like hell, except I'm going to start doing it more publicly, not so much quietly and politely anymore, because it's starting to come down to the wire. 2017 is coming right up. In terms of getting the legislation in place, we don't have time. So I'll be more vocal, and I won't be so friendly always in how I'm vocal, and I'll be hit also by my own party, I suppose, but I no longer have anything to lose. So I won't fight only behind the scenes. I will now take the fight out.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so some other remarks? Yes,
yes, maybe most of it has been said already. I think maybe just a few words on the Ukrainian agreement, and then on what to do in case of a disruption. So I would definitely agree that it's a preliminary one, and that of course the Stockholm arbitration is going to be the key moment. But the signs are positive. We have, as a Commission, been following a two-track policy. On the one hand, the stress tests, seeing what we can do to mitigate again the impacts of a disruption should it happen, and on the other hand, working on this agreement with Ukraine, which my colleagues have been doing really day and night in the last weeks. And the signs are positive again. The fees that had to be paid until now have been paid, so that's positive. As to the disruption, are there plans in place? Was your question? Yes, there are plans in place. There's a risk assessment. So what are our risks? What would happen in case of a disruption? And then a preventive action plan and an emergency plan. And the ministries are even working on, in December, I think, publishing a joint plan with the whole region. So that would be the first of its kind in Europe, and a very positive development. And as to the results of the scenarios that we've been looking into, what would happen if there would be a disruption, when we wrote it, the situation was very critical, dependent on the Klaipėda LNG terminal coming online or not. If it would not have come online, then in Estonia they would run out of gas completely in 4 days. But now it looks as though they can actually see through the winter, at least for their protected customers. Still, 80 to 90% of the non-protected customers could still be disrupted. But this is again, this depends again to a large extent on the question of whether the Inčukalns storage can be used or not. You would say yes, it's there, it's in the ground, but there are questions, legal questions, as to whether the gas that is there in the ground can actually be used, and to what extent, and by whom. So that's one of the things. Also has to do again with unbundling and the liberalization of the gas market, whether that can be to some extent be solved in the coming weeks and months.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So let's have another round of questions, but please, I think you, Ms. Ruben, wanted to. No, please. I mean, just another.
I would partially just want to share an observation. I used to work on issues that deal with gas going from the Caspian to Europe. And in that environment, my job was also to deal with many different stakeholders. It was quite astonishing how many individuals in the diplomatic efforts, as well as representing businesses, were all of the same sex, approximately of the same age, and usually educated in the same Moscow School of Foreign Affairs.
So many women.
Yes, you got that. Secondly, I was at a conference, that was actually more telling. I was at a conference, or a closed sort of conference last week in Germany that was about renewable energy and with large German investment funds. And one of the participants was a senior person in the Club of Rome who hated fossil fuels, let me add that, oil and gas. But their observation was that there were 800 lobbyists in Brussels alone on behalf of Gazprom, which is significantly more than I know all of the Western oil and gas companies have in Brussels, at least the registered ones. which means that probably the lobby is even deeper in all of our countries, and Lithuania, as usually, is highly independent in thinking and in actions. And therefore, my deepest concern, which I would share with you, Mr. Kariņš, and with some of the people here, is that the lobby for retaining Inčukalns in mitigated or softened terms on behalf of the Latvian Republic is very high, and that should we decide to have the LNG terminal that we probably as a country in Latvia let get away, may be very difficult, let's call it that. And I'm extremely concerned about the impact and the strength and the lobbying power that Russian political environment has on our economic decisions, and the main one will be about independence. And if you have that kind of a force in Brussels, I don't even want to think about London. And Gazprom, at the end of the day, is a company that's listed on the New York Stock Exchange, as is Rosneft, and therefore they have certain kind of responsibility to their shareholders, at least the ones, or not shareholders, but perhaps sort of the regulatory environment that the New York Stock Exchange would put upon a company such as Gazprom or Rosneft, which could maybe be then used in negotiation terms, let's call it that, between the EU and others. Just an observation.
Thank you. So we still have a little bit time for the last round of some additional questions or comments. Remis, please. Yes, over there. Yeah, let's start with Remis.
Good afternoon, Reinis Baltiņš. First an observation, then probably a question to the distinguished members of the panel. One observation is that indeed there has been very large inconsistency in energy policy over the 23 years. 28 ministers, to be very precise, have been guiding 28 ministers over 23 years. No, it's actually 29 now, 29th minister now with the new government. So indeed, I think this to some extent explains the inconsistencies and also we cannot exclude also vested interests. But there has been also a lot of speculation about the ability of the Baltic states to carry through the worst case scenario in case that comes true. And if the physical gas supplies cut down to the Baltic states, and in this case, of course, Lithuania would be, until the Klaipėda terminal started functioning, or it's actually happening right now, until that moment, Lithuania would be the worst placed positioned to handle this because it receives most of its, over 90% of its gas supplies through the pipeline from Russia through Belarus. Very small volumes, actually, very, very small physical volumes are supplied from Latvia to Lithuania as well, but these are really insignificant volumes. And the good thing about Estonians, although of course they would run out very quickly without Inčukalns, they consume very little gas, in fact, and that's mostly for district heating purposes in Tallinn, mainly. And they are also diversifying the district heating fuels. They're making fuel switch. They're working on it. Very soon they will be very strong against any such potential risks. Anyway, they produce most of the electricity from oil shale, which is not very environmentally friendly, but very from the production point of view, very sustainable, in fact. Especially while the carbon doesn't cost anything in Europe. Latvia would be best positioned, given it can, from the legal point of view, prove that there is an emergency situation according to the legislation in this country, and it could intervene with the functioning of Inčukalns underground gas storage facility, because otherwise the Latvian state unfortunately doesn't have anything to do with Inčukalns. Only a few land plots under the Inčukalns facility belong to the state. A few belong to the municipalities, and the rest is private landowners, from which Latvia's gas rents the land, pays the rent. So it's indeed quite a tricky situation, and I cannot imagine what sort of emergency that would have to be indeed to enact the laws which regulate the rights of the state to intervene in business, in private business, in case of emergency. So actually, this is a really significant question asked by Rubes. Whether we have procedures in place. Maybe Rota has a good answer to this, although I'm not sure. I've spoken to a number of quite high-level civil servants, not to Rota about this, but who have also expressed doubts whether there is whether there is a clear understanding. Maybe the procedure is there, but whether there is a clear understanding if indeed the worst-case scenario comes true. And the question is maybe to the panelists, whoever would wish to answer, does it really make sense now that we have Klaipėda LNG terminal here? Does it make sense having another LNG terminal, especially co-financed by the EU? If I mean, there is. I know that there is interest. There's commercial interest for LNG, for other LNG terminals, albeit for small ones. But does it actually make sense if Lithuanian LNG terminal can cover 3/4 of the region's consumption?
Sorry. Excellent, Renis. Yeah, thanks a lot. So I could say there is still. Yep.
Hello, my name is Katrīna Pļaviņa. I'm a lecturer on WTO law here at RGSL and a lawyer. I was wondering about the Kaliningrad and the investments Gazprom and other Russian companies have made into the region and its potential effect on the Baltics. I guess it's more to Mr. Krutikhin, but please feel free. So I understand that there is a gas storage facility in Kaliningrad, which Gazprom has built, and also there are still, I guess, plans for the nuclear power station that would feed into the electricity grid. So what is your assessment of those projects? And since I understand the storage facility is done. And secondly, if any one of you knows, and maybe that's more to Rota really, is there any update on how we would calculate the tariff of the Russian electricity that would be fed in? Because I understand in September there were some discussions about these between the 3 Baltic electricity operators. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So some other questions? Yes, please, Andris.
My name is Andrei Yeliseyev. I'm an analyst at the Belarusian Institute for Strategic Studies. I've got a question to Mr. Ruben Vermeeren. As far as I understand, that stress test was only built on a scenario of hypothetical disruption of gas transit via Ukraine only. But if Russia wants to complicate the things for the EU, it would also disrupt the gas transit via Belarus, and probably Poland will be harmed as well. Was the scenario built only on Ukrainian case or not?
Okay, thank you. Still some other questions? Yes, please. Yes, please. I think go ahead. You have a strong voice, so. Okay.
My question for Krišjānis Kariņš. And it's very simple. As we understand, many important decisions in energy must be made in Latvia. We postpone many of them, but probably it's time to take it. The question is how these decisions could be made, or who are responsible for that? If we have idea, and we, I think, very near to what we must, how we can start to make decisions in our country.
Okay, excellent. So perhaps just from my side, I would add to the last round of already replies. I cannot I avoid my own temptations. So just once more, I would underline what I think Reinis asked. Very important question that has been echoed around here, sort of around the room for Rota. So if there is really energy gas disruptions, do we have any legal instruments actually to take the gas from Inčukalns this winter? So this is, I think, very important sort of to face this and to address it. To my Lithuanian colleague, I will still ask also why in Latvia we actually so critical and we are complaining that we cannot do? Why Lithuanians? What was the driving force behind Lithuania? And I'm not sure if I use success story or at least some move forward. What was the driving force? Why there is a difference in political culture? And then actually also the question to Ruben, and correct me if I'm mistaken, and I be mistaken, but somehow I labor again perhaps under some misleading assumption. But isn't it that stress test report said that Latvia will be better off in case of non-solidarity rather than solidarity? So Latvia is not very much interested in solidarity and cooperation with other countries. So let's start in a reverse mode with Mikhail. And I think especially in Kariņš.
About Gazprom projects in the Baltic area. Well, basically, right now, Gazprom is not carrying out any significant projects in the area because it lacks finance, and the company has to focus on the most important projects, such as the power of Siberia pipeline and the projects in Sakhalin 3, which is the exploration and maybe production of gas offshore Sakhalin from Kirinsky and South Kirinsky fields. They do not have a lot of money to spend on any other ventures, so that's it.
Okay. I'm just going to pick up on the storage thing. I'm a bit puzzled by this. I was saying, it's very legally difficult. We need, to access the storage. Well, I was sitting there thinking, various cases go through my head of various competition law cases in which storage has been demanded by the European Commission of various major dominant energy companies, so they have to share storage with other parties, they have to give access and so forth. And I don't know what's in the 600 pages or more of the Commission statement of objections, but there may well be something to do with the Latvian storage facilities. But the point about it is that you've got a dominant company, which is not dominant, but a monopoly company providing 100% of supply to, I'm just working on European antitrust principles here, 100% of supply. It also has control of the storage facilities. I would have thought you would be looking at a number of regulatory and antitrust options to gain access to the storage facilities. And certainly I think you'll be able to do that in an emergency. I can think of different cases where that has happened in other member states. So I find it puzzling as to why it should be such a great difficulty in Latvia. Especially when I can't imagine, I was just trying to think, is there any other case where there's been access to storage facilities where the dominant company was provided 100% of supply? I was sitting there thinking, no. So it's even, you actually got a more extreme example. Most of the other cases where they weren't there wasn't a monopoly supply, they were dominant. And at the end of the day, as I say, the other issue is, in terms of supply, you have to remember that because they're super dominant, they have this special responsibility. If they can be shown not to comply with that, you have a route into using antitrust law, either domestic or European.
Mm-hmm. Rota, perhaps immediately we can sort of to extend this one, not to jump with the question. So please.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And first of all, if it will be really critical situation, then probably government will use very critical means how to solve it. And this is not the situation we are really looking forward today. And today we're more looking to kind of market-based instruments how to solve the situation if we are getting some kind of not so extreme problems. And we have third-party access in place starting with this year April. Probably where some regulatory parts should be improved, and Lithuanian company already having some reserves in Inčukalns. There is also a gas which is possibly could be reserved for Estonia, but the companies probably didn't have yet an agreement, or they still couldn't find the common ground for negotiations. But possibility exists, and the same for the access should be also is in place for a transmission system. The problem may be that the system is getting ready. As far as we asked for some cases where the companies refused, at ministry we didn't receive any. But at least we discussed with regulator and companies, and this should be granted. And there are probably also grounds on which the directive allows to reject the access if there are some kind of agreements or other preconditions. But I think it's still the thing to come, and we are working on this, and then I think the system will be ready.
Okay, thank you. You immediately would add something? Yep.
Yes, and then I can take immediately also the question.
Yes, please.
So, indeed, I think this question of then actually being able to use Inčukalns gas came up in the context of the stress test, and I would think that is also the added value of the stress test. The initial reaction of the various Baltic ministries was this is a highly theoretical exercise. Russia is as dependent on our gas in the winter, St. Petersburg, as we are on their gas. But we said, nevertheless, carry out the scenario. Just see what happens. What are the figures? What's going to happen? And then one of the first questions they ran into is, can we actually use the Inčukalns gas? So it highlighted this issue, and now it's something to be solved. You can do that by competition law, by competition case. It would take years. I think on the basis of the third directive, it would also take some time. And I'm not sure if this particular article of third-party access to storages is now subject to the existing exemption that Latvia has or not, but I believe it is. And so it's not something that you would solve from one day to the next, but at least it's on top of mind of the, in any case, the Latvian ministry. And as the representative said, should an extreme scenario happen, then also, of course, extreme measures can be taken. And I would presume that that would mean that gas that you have in your own country, in your own storage, that you would use that. But legally, it's not solved. What the second point was, yes, the stress test question as to the scenarios that were used. Was only a Ukrainian scenario used? No, because then the outcome for the Baltics would have been no issue. We are still receiving gas from Russia. There's no connection with the rest of Europe, so we are fine. Another scenario was indeed carried out for the Baltic states, a complete disruption of all Russian supplies for 1 month in February, 1 month in August, 6 months and 7 months. Those 4 scenarios were exercised and modeled. And that touches then upon your question, saying that would Latvia indeed be better off without solidarity? Well, clearly yes. I mean, they are sitting on the gas. The scenario of non-cooperation means that you close the border as soon as a disruption hits. And that means that you can use the gas that you have in your territory for a longer period, because you don't have to export it in view of solidarity for your neighbors. But overall, and that's the outcome of it, overall, I think it's important to add, the total social benefits of cooperation outweigh by far the plus.
But not this winter.
Well, you have to see the why is it important to realize this? It's not so bad to lose the first 10% of your gas, because with voluntary demand reduction, producing a bit less in industrial processes, you can cope. When it becomes serious is when you have to disconnect protected customers, households, in the freezing cold, especially in these areas, and that is what we need to prevent. So if everybody just would share a bit of the disruption, then the impacts are not so serious at all.
Thank you. Excellent. Yeah, please.
Okay, let's come back a little bit to LNG terminal. It's news. Yes, in principle, in Lithuania, there are no one voice about or one meaning about LNG terminal. If you look to the press of Lithuania, you will find different discussions and argument that prices will increase 10 or 7 or 6%. Anyway, it's significant for people who use heat for houses heating. But anyway, from one side, I think that it's a success example of success story for Lithuania, because it's a first project which was introduced, made until end from the beginning during 3 or 4 different cycles, politicians. And at least 2 cycles, and in last cycles, from Labour parties was changed to socialist parties, but all they keep this project on top, and 2 last prime ministers they made many efforts for success of this project. It's good. From another side, that Lithuania cannot to agree with our neighbors, with Latvia and Estonia, and to put this project like I don't know, like a key project for security, for energy security, and give a support from European Union funds. It's unsuccess. It's very bad situation, and I think that it's time to sit down together, prime ministers of 3 Baltic countries, and to solve this problem, maybe to share financing of this project, or to find another ways. Now you know that for Lithuania, obligatory Lithuanian companies must to use 25% of gas via terminal. Prices can be higher than from Gazprom. Nobody knows for the winter, for next year. But anyway, they are dangerous. Answer to your question, it's from one side it's success. From another side, it's not success. It's because it shows that we cannot to make a common decision. 3 Baltic countries. And you remember maybe nuclear power plant in Ignalina, about new nuclear power plant. It's like joke was, and 10 or more years this project cannot to start. Now I think there are no possibilities to renew this project. It's unsuccess project. But LNG, it's more success but anyway, it shows there are problems in cooperation between our countries.
Thank you. Krišjānis, you contributed very much to the frank discussion today, so please, yes, some additional frank revelations at the end of discussion.
No, I've become far too unpopular, at least within my own party. No, what the question was, what decisions and who needs to make them? But to step back, I'll answer that. In all of the Baltics, for the Klaipėda terminal to really make money and to make its cost less expensive to the consumer, the Lithuanians need a bigger market than just Lithuania. They need the Latvian market as well. There are fixed costs, and they get passed on to the consumers. Fewer consumers, the costs cut in more to your end gas price. Very simple. More consumers, those fixed costs become a smaller proportion, and you have to keep the ship anyway, and you can't cut down on those costs. How to expand the market? There is a key. It is in Latvia, and it is intracounts. The entire region's potential open market rests on freeing up the intracounts capacity, opening up to competition. That's the key. If there can be free competition, that is, various producers or sellers can use the intracounts facility without the express acquiescence of the Kremlin, then we're in business. All of us are in business. The Latvian consumer, the Lithuanian consumer, And whether there will be 1 or 2 or 5 terminals, then the market would decide that. But the market can't decide anything because there is no market. So the key decisions prior to Baltic cooperation on this issue have to be made within the Latvian government. And there are 2 players that have to make the decisions. It's the Minister of Economic Affairs, as you know very well, who is also in charge of energy, and it's the Prime Minister. If these 2 individuals, just as 2 individuals, can agree on the program, I'm sure they can sell the program to the rest of the cabinet. I'm sure they could sell the program to the majority of the parliament. And the 2 decisions have to be decision 1. It's not a technical decision, it's an idea decision, is that you have to prepare, the government have to prepare all the legal framework for opening up competition in 2017 when the monopoly agreement ends with, essentially with Gazprom, with Latvia's gas. That's decision 1 that has to be made, and the signal given to all the associated structures. And the decision 2 that has to be made, the issue of underground resource ownership has to be resolved. In Latvia currently, we have a law nowhere else in Europe. Whoever owns the plot of land owns down to the core, the center of the earth, everything underneath. And that is actually a problem because whoever owns the land above Inchakals theoretically owns that. And then there's this issue of resources, and it's a little unclear, but this needs to be fully resolved so that someone sitting on top, I own this hectare of land, cannot cut into what is going on underneath. And these are 2 simple yet obviously difficult decisions have to be made. I have mentioned 2 people who I think have to be the primary movers, and everything else will then follow. And then the key is, once these people make that decision, if the whole system, that is the majority of politics, stays behind them, it will succeed. But if these 2 people make this decision, come out with, and then because they will be attacked for this, and then the majority does not stand behind them, then we have no chance. So it's an all-in. But the key movers are these 2 individuals.
Thank you, Krišjānis. Before I just very shortly close the session, I would like to give the floor to Greta, to our partner, for the, I guess, also one of the last comments. Yeah, please.
Thank you. I will not take a long time. I represent Center for Geopolitical Studies in Vilnius, Lithuania, but just wanted to add some short comments in regards of the LNG terminal and the Baltic cooperation. In fact, the LNG terminal, why is it so important to us that the asymmetry in regards of the negotiations with the Gazprom has changed dramatically, because we were totally in the asymmetrical situation and we didn't have any arguments why we should pay less than $500 per cubic meter. So this is the first point that makes our yes. And then in regards of the Baltic cooperation, I mean the Baltic cooperation is going forward. It's totally possible, and the LNG terminal was ordered in this kind of big size because of the Baltic cooperation, because we were expecting that this LNG terminal can supply the gas also to Latvia. If, for instance, the gas is cut off for a long time and Inchikal's storage is out of gas, and that the gas could be supplied also to Estonia. So this is the main idea, and I mean it's a matter of let's say agreement and decision making, which as I can see from all the extreme situations, it's possible to have very fast if really the situation is very extreme. And in case if we have really, as the stress tests show, some situation that the gas is cut off, I suppose it will be much more easy to agree on the certain agreements.
Thank you, Greta, but I think we are really running out of time and we can continue still down at the copy. Just since we have run out of time, so I just say it very shortly. For me, this was actually 2 words, the event. It's about political will. And I think we have had some problems with this political will, and I think we must be realistic about it as well. But also we should give a benefit of doubt, because the government is just being confirmed a few days ago. So let's still wait, and we know the two key people whom we should pressurize in a sense, and whom we should invite to make the all right decisions. how realistic it is, it's another issue. Thanks to the audience. Thanks for the engaging questions. Thanks to the partners for supporting and being part of this wider discussion. Of course, last but not least, thank you so much, the distinguished speakers, and please join me in the last round of applause before we go to the coffee.